This is a tutorial on using the Behavior Incident Reporting System. When you first open up the file, you may get a pop-up that asks you to enable macros. If you do, go ahead and enable it. You might also get a comment or a question asking if you want to edit, so you'll want to enable as well. You'll have to do both of those things if it asks you in order for the file to work correctly. Once you open the file, you'll see that there are a series of tabs down at the bottom. In order to navigate those tabs, you can click on these arrows in the left-hand corner, and it'll move the tabs towards the left so that you can see all of the available tabs. So the Instruction tab is the first tab, just gives you a little bit of information about the Behavior Incident Reporting System. It also has my email in case you run into any issues as you're using it. The link to the tutorial will also be on this tab. The next tab is the Data Entry and Quality Checklist. This tab just gives you some information about what you should look for prior to data analysis. You'll want to check your data entry to make sure that you don't have any of the common errors that are listed here. So you have a couple of things that you can look at on the BIR Data Entry tab, on the Child Enrollment tab, and the Program Information tab. You also have a BIR completion checklist, and so this also is a list that you can review before you do data analysis to make sure that you have high quality data entered into the system. The next tab is the Program Information tab. So once you have your system, you've done the training, you'll want to come in here and enter your program demographics. You'll want to visit this page at least twice a month. So you'll enter your program name, your school year, and then this is where you'll do the enrollment of teachers in classrooms. So you have up to 30 slots for classrooms. So you'll want to come up with an ID for each classroom, and then you'll enter the enrollment for that month. As you enter the enrollment, you'll get a total down below. You'll also want to enter the total number of children enrolled by ethnicity. So you'll enter how many children are Hispanic or Latino of any race. So once you enter this number, then the green row will auto-populate based on your enrollment number here and what you've entered here. So it'll subtract. So for example, here we entered there were 155 Hispanic or Latino children of any race. So it subtracts that from 273 to give you 118 children who are not Hispanic or Latino. Then below that, you have enrollment by race. And so you will put in how many children belong to each racial category, and you'll also get a total here. So ideally the number here, the total number for your race, will equal this green line here. And then you'll have enrollment by gender. You'll enter how many female students are enrolled in the program, and then your male children will auto-populate again based on your total enrollment. You'll do the same thing for IEP. You'll put in how many children have an IEP, and then down here how many children are dual language learners. And then lastly, you'll enter how many school days per month. So you'll want to visit this at least twice a month. The Child Enrollment tab is your next tab. So the Child Enrollment tab, you only enroll children who have received a BIR. So you will not upload your rosters. You won't add every child in your program. You'll only add children as they receive a BIR. So on the bottom of their BIR form, there is a location where the teachers will record their demographic information. Once that's there, you come into the child enrollment. You make sure the child is enrolled. So if they're not enrolled, you go ahead and you enroll them here. If they are enrolled, then you can go straight into data entry. But the first time the child receives a BIR, you'll enroll them here. So you'll write in their name, the ID, their gender, this is a drop down, if their dual language learner status, if they're DLL or not, if they have an IEP, then their ethnicity, if they are Hispanic or not, their race, and then if they are enrolled or not. So initially all children will start off as enrolled. If the child leaves the program, then you'll want to make sure you come here and then you select that they have disenrolled, and then you will want to put in a date here of when that occurred. So this is really helpful when you're looking at data, because once a child is in the system, you do not delete the child from the system and you do not delete their data. So knowing that they've disenrolled and when is very helpful when you go in to look at the data. And so you'll see that I have here gaps in the, I don't have anything entered for the race for if they are Hispanic or Latino. And that's just because I didn't have that information, but you can enter the race if you wish. However, when you're analyzing data, children who are Hispanic or Latino are grouped together regardless of their race. So after this has up to 100 slots to enroll up to 175 children. If you happen to have more than that, then you can email me and I can make any adjustments there. So after you've done your program demographics, you've enrolled the children, now you're ready for BIR data entry. So each row of the BIR data entry tab is equal to one BIR form. So you start off with your classroom ID. It's a drop down, so you select from your drop down. If you do not see the classroom ID here, it probably means that either it's incorrect on the BIR form or the teacher or the classroom was not enrolled in the program information tab. So you'll want to go ahead and take a look at those two things before you enter the data. A child ID, this is also from the child enrollment tab. So if the child ID does not show up here, then the child is probably not enrolled or the ID is incorrect. So you can select the child ID, then you select the month, you enter the date, and then you enter the time. So the time is in 24-hour format. So if I were to type 11:10 a.m. as my time, it'll automatically show me 11:10 a.m. But like the next row here, if the incident occurred in the afternoon at 2:50, if I put 2:50, it'll go and show me 2:50 a.m. So you have two options. Either you enter it in that military 24-hour format, so 14:50 will give me 2:50 p.m., or I enter 2:50 and then I go up here and I change the A into a P. And then now it's 2:50 p.m. Those are the two ways you can enter time. If you type something like 2:50 p.m., this time here is recognized as its own time. It doesn't group into any of the time categories. So you'll see later on, I will show you a chart where time is grouped. The time of the incident is grouped to the nearest half hour. If you have something like this 2:50 p.m., it will give you 2:50 as its own time. So you want to make sure that you don't do this and that you type it in correctly. You type it in correctly, so either the 14:50 or 2:50, and adjust the AM to the PM. So you want to make sure that you don't make mistakes in the entry of time, because that will affect that chart in particular. The next is problem behavior, so that is a drop down as well. So you just select which problem behavior, the activity, others involved, possible motivation, the strategy or response, and then if we scroll over, the administrative follow-up. So it's really, and you also have a column for notes if you want to add any notes. It's really important that although it's easy, it's probably faster to type in these responses, you have a lot of opportunity for errors. If you were to type assistant teacher and not capitalize the T in teacher, the system will recognize that entry as its own entry. It won't group assistant teacher together with the one that you typed in with that lowercase t. Assistant teacher with lowercase t will be one item, and assistant teacher with the T capitalized will be another item. And so you'll have, that'll give you incorrect charts and tables. So you'll want to make sure that you use the drop downs. Another thing, if you're noticing you have a lot of BIRs that you're entering and the system is kind of calculating as you go, you'll know that because there's a little lag as you do data entry, and you'll see right down here, right below the tabs, it'll say calculating, and it will give you a percentage. If you see that, it could take a little longer for data entry. So what you can do is go up to the Formula tab, go to Calculation Options, and select Manual. Enter all of your data. This will stop the spreadsheet from calculating anything. So you can go ahead, you can enter all of your data, and then once you're done, you come back up to the Formula tab, go to Calculation Options, and set it back to automatic. And then it will calculate everything for you. You want to make sure that you turn that back on before you do any other analysis or save the file. This, by turning it off to manual, it'll just make data entry a lot quicker. This tab has room for up to 1,000 entries. If you happen to have more than 1,000 entries, then please send me an email. And again, the important things here is making sure that you're not typing in your responses to minimize any error, and that you're typing in the time correctly. So once you've entered your data, now you're ready to look at all of the charts and tables. The Program Summary tab gives you an at-a-glance of all of your program's data. So the first thing you'll see is how many BIRs you have to date and how many children have BIRs. You'll have that month by month as well. If you want to adjust your charts so that they don't include months where there was no data or there was no school, like let's say there was no school in August for this test site, then you can click on the chart itself, then right click, go down to select data, and then you can uncheck August and say OK. And now when you go back to this chart, you'll see that August was removed. So if you want to do that for a report or for anything, you can do that. So just right click, select data, and then check or uncheck the months that you want to see. You can also click on the chart, go up to the new tab that says Chart Tools, go to Design, go to Select Data, and it has the same thing. You can click and unclick there. So you can do that for any of the charts. So that's your first chart. Over here you have equity profile alerts. So if there is any possibility of disproportionality, then you have an alert here that you can click on, and it'll take you to that tab for you to take a closer look. You also have the quick links. So if you want to go to any tab in particular, instead of kind of scrolling down on the bottom, you can just click here and it'll take you to that tab. So as we scroll down, we'll see that there's different charts here: average number of incidents per day, percent of total BIRs. Make sure you're always paying attention to the y-axis so that you know what that's based on. You have a table here that feeds into these first four charts, if you prefer to see that in table format. Then you have the percent of BIRs to date by problem behavior. So it shows you the problem behaviors, the activities. It also has links. So if you're looking at problem behavior and you want to look more at what's going on in the program, then you can click on this link and it'll take you into the problem behavior tab. So that is under each one of the charts. And then down at the bottom you have the total number of children with BIRs. So this histogram here, out of it tells you how many children have 1 BIR, how many children have 1 to 5 BIRs, how many children have 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and more than 20. It also gives you that in table form. So you can see that there are 8 children with at least 1 BIR, 20 children with 1 to 5 BIRs, and then it gives you a proportion of the total population. So out of all of the children in our program who are enrolled, what percent has 1 BIR? So that's 3%. So that you have that information there. So that is your program summary tab. Your next tab is your monthly BIRs by classroom ID. And so here on this tab, it shows you by classroom how many BIRs by month. And so you have all of your classrooms and then the months. You also have a chart down at the bottom that gives you that information as well. Here you have these little squares here called filters, and on these filters you're able to look at one or multiple classrooms or months, so you're able to filter out the data. So if I want to look at classroom 1, I can click on 1, and then it'll give me the table for classroom 1. So these are the BIRs for classroom 1, and then if I scroll down, it'll show me that in a bar chart. You can pick more than one classroom. So if I wanted to look at classroom 1, 3, and 5, I can click on 1. I hold down the control key on my keyboard, I click 3, and I click 5. And now it shows me all 3 classrooms and then the months. If I only wanted to see classroom 1, 3, and 5 for the month of October, then I click on October, and then it'll show me only classroom 5 because only classroom 5 had any BIRs in October. So if I had selected 1, 3, and 5 initially, and then I selected a month, and it only showed me one of those classrooms, it means that the other classrooms did not have data for that month. If I select more months, then now I see classroom 1 reappears because they do have a BIR in December. And now if I click January and February, now I have 1, 3, and 5 show up again because now they do have BIRs in the additional months that I chose. So you can select and deselect months as you need to. You'll see that September disappeared from here, and that is only because September there was no data for either of these classrooms. So if there is no data for that month, if the month does not appear here, it means that there was no data for that month. To clear filters and to go back to my original view, you just click on these filter icons, and then it goes back to your original view. With any of these, on any of the tabs, if you have this show up here where it says blank, in order to remove that, you'll want to click here, and then you will want to look for blank. So you kind of scroll here, look for that blank. You can uncheck it and click OK, and now blank is gone. So if you have that show up on any of your charts or your tables, again, you just click here and you look for blank and you uncheck it. The same is true for month. If blank appears here, so you see here it says blank, I'll uncheck it, I'll say OK, and it'll disappear from the tables. So that's something that you'll always want to do before you print out any charts or graphs. So the next tab is the monthly BIRs by child ID. So this here is very similar. It shows you all of the children in descending order by number of total BIRs. So it shows you all of the children by month, their BIR, how many BIRs they received. You have all these filters across the top that you can filter this data with. So you also have this enrollment status little table here that shows you if a child was disenrolled. So if I'm looking at this data and I look at child 38 and I see they have 32 BIRs in October, I may wonder why they don't have any other BIRs afterwards. So here it shows me that they disenrolled. So that could possibly explain why there aren't any more BIRs after October. So if the child enrollment tab, I can go back there and I can see when that child was disenrolled to see if it aligns with when they stopped receiving BIRs. So that this here gives you just an at a glance at which children have been disenrolled. That's why it's very important, if a child was disenrolled, to make sure you go to that child enrollment tab and you change that enrolled to disenrolled. So as I was saying here, you can filter the data using any of these filters that is of interest. If any of these filters bunch up for you as they did for me, you can just click on them and just move them over, and that's totally okay. And so you have, as you click on the filters, then the tables will update. So if you only wanted to see the month of September, which children received BIRs, you can click September. Then it will show me all of the children who received BIR. If you wanted to know in September which were the female students who received BIR, then you can click on the female and then it'll show you it was just one. If you want to clear that filter, then you can clear it up here, and then you can continue looking at data that way. So that's how this tab works in that way. And so you'll see here again that little blank, you'll see it appear here. Again, go to month, uncheck blank, click OK. So you have you can look at data this way. The next tab is the problem behavior tab. So now we start looking at the different categories. Most of these tabs are set up pretty much the same. Problem behavior is the only one that's different. The problem behavior tab, so at the top you have a table of all of the problem behaviors and the months, and then it shows you how many BIRs were written where that was the problem behavior for that month. And then you can look at specific problem behaviors. So this is in descending order, so if you wanted to look at physical aggression, you can come here, click physical aggression, it'll show you by month, and then you have this chart here that also shows you physical aggression for the year. And then you can click to delete the filters. If you're not seeing, so here to the right is a list of all of the possible problem behaviors that are on the form. So you can, if you don't see it on your table, it means that no BIRs were written for that problem behavior. And then this just this just shows you what the possibilities are if you're wondering about a specific one. So as you scroll down, now you can look at problem behaviors by classroom ID, by month, ethnicity, race, gender, dual language learner status, or IEP. So this table here updates as you select filters. So if you only want to know what are the problem behaviors for our Hispanic or Latino students, then I can click that, and then it will update here. It'll show me the percent of total incidents, the total number of incidents for each problem behavior. The pie chart also updates to show me that. If you have your labels that all bunch up this way, you can click on a label twice. So you click on a label twice, and then you can move it until you can read your labels. Alternatively, there is another chart underneath. So here on this bar chart, it is the same information as what is in the table above. So it gives you the total number of incidents in the orange line, and then your axis is here, so total number of incidents. So for physical aggression, we know there's 142 incidents. And then it gives you the percent of total incidents in the bar, and so we know that that's about 36%. And so you have this information from this table also here. So if you don't want to use the pie chart, you can also use this chart below. And again, this information here is in this chart here, and the percent from this table here is shown here. And again, you can filter that any way that you want. So then below that, you have problem behavior analysis by category. And so here, this is very specific to if you have the BIR equity guide, then this is what they're referring to as far as looking at data by problem behavior. And so you can select a behavior and then use your filters there to look at problem behavior by activity, others involved, possible motivation, response, and administrative follow-up. And then you have your other filters that you may want to use at that point. So now the activity tab. So the activity tab is set up in a similar fashion to the problem behavior tab, and it has your activities up at the top by month. You're able to filter out any specific activities that you want to look at. So you'll get your table, you'll get your chart. You also have then the same filters that you can filter your data below. So you have this table here, looks at your activities, and it has the pie chart, so you can look at it that way. As you scroll down, you have the other chart that gives you both the total number of incidents and the percent of total incidents. So you have both. But then you also have an additional table. And so in this table, it gives you the activity by problem behaviors. So in centers, what were the problem behaviors that occurred? So in centers, you'll see that you had 26% of your total incidents occurred in centers, and of those 26% of incidents, the problem behavior, most frequent problem behavior was physical aggression, 9%. So this breaks the problem behavior down by category. So you'll see that. So as you select a filter up here, so if I'm only looking at September, then this will update for September. These are the incidents. Here's the pie chart updated. This updated as well. And then down here, this table updated as well. So all of these 4 elements update as you select filters. The others involved tab is the next tab, and that one is set up the same. So you have your filter, your table, and your chart. You have all your options to the right. As you scroll down, you have the same filters, you have the same tables, the pie chart, others involved by problem behavior, and you have the chart. So this one is set up the same. Possible motivation is set up the same. So you have the table, the filter, different possible motivations, your charts, you have your different filters, your table, your pie chart, and then you have your other chart if you wish to use that, and then the possible motivation, and then the problem behaviors. Then you'll also see that in all of these there's a back to program summary tab link. So if you click that, it takes you back to that main program summary tab. So all of these have that same link at the top. So this is by response, and so again it's the same setup. Administrative follow-up is the same. And one thing I want to note here is that in administrative follow-up, you'll see that blank appears, but there is actually data. There's one for February, March, April, and May. So what I want to point out here is that the reason that blank actually gives you data here is because this field was left blank on one BIR. So in one BIR, administrative follow-up is actually blank. Nothing was selected. Instead of leaving that field blank, the data entry person should have selected not applicable so that it can tally in there instead of showing up as a blank. So you'll want to make sure that you're always looking at that as well. So if you see any of these blanks that actually have data, then you'll want to go back into your data entry and see if any fields were left blank, and possibly follow up with the teacher to figure out why it was left blank, or select one of the options like not applicable. So as we scroll down, we'll see that this administrative follow-up tab is also set up the same. In the pie chart, you'll see that these labels are hard to read, but again, you just have to click and just move the labels. It makes it difficult to read for sure, and that's why we have this other table chart right here, so that you can also see it this way. So this is the administrative follow-up tab. So once you're done So now with the administrative follow-up, we also have classroom summaries. So if you want to look at data by classroom ID, then this tab gives you all of your data by classroom ID. So if I only want to look at classroom number 1, I can click on classroom 1 and it'll give me their total number of incidents by month in a table and in a chart, the problem behaviors in that classroom, in which activities, who was involved, the total number of incidents by possible motivation, what's the response by administrative follow-up, and then here's the total number of incidents by time of day. So this rounds so based on the time that you entered, this will round up the incident to the nearest half hour, up or down. So it gives you an idea that it looks like most incidents were occurring around 10 a.m. So that's why it's important that you enter time correctly so that it feeds this table and chart correctly. So this is by teacher, by classroom ID, so you can select any of the classroom IDs and get your information. If you scroll to the right, you'll also have a table that gives you the total number of incidents by child ID. So once you click on the teacher, you can see who are the children who are receiving BIRs in that classroom. So when I click classroom 1, I see that in classroom 1, the children receiving BIRs are child number 1 and child number 32. So child number 1 received 251 of the 255 incidents, and child number 32 received 4 of the 255 incidents. So that is also handy to have. You can then look at the Child Summary tab. In the Child Summary tab, you can select Child ID and you'll get that same information you got in the Classroom Summary. So if you want to look at child number 1, then it'll show you their incidents by month, their problem behavior, their BIRs by problem behavior, their incidents by activity, incidents by others involved, their possible motivation, the response, administrative follow-up, and then you have this other chart down at the bottom that gives you the incidents by day. This one is not as helpful because the days are not consecutive. It does skip over some days, so this is not as great as it could be, but it does give you an idea of how the child is doing over time. But again, please pay attention that it doesn't give you consecutive days. So if we're looking like at May, you have May 16th, 17th, 18th, and then it jumps to 21. So May 19th and 20th, it doesn't show them as 0 points. So you might think that they're continuously getting BIRs when the child may not be. So this is not just if you use this one, then you'll want to just pay attention to the x-axis and what dates are below. So this is by child ID, so you can just select the child that you want to see data for. Your next tab is the distribution by class ID. So this tab here has all of your possible filters. So it just, if you have a very specific question or something that you want to see, you can click here and it gives you classroom IDs where that BIR was written. So if I'm looking to see where BIRs are written for physical aggression, I can click physical aggression. Then it'll show me all of the classrooms where a BIR for physical aggression was written. If I'm looking at physical aggression in transitions, let's say, I can click on transition now, and that'll show me all of the classroom where physical aggression occurred during transition. And so then with this information, then you can continue to unpack data. But so this here, you can just filter the data basically any way that you want. So the only thing to pay attention here is that if this is highlighted, it means that you've filtered through that. And as you highlight, you'll see that the other filters change. So when I cleared this filter, others involved, it showed me all the options, but once I clicked cleanup, you'll see that now there are 4 options. So an administrative follow-up and response. You'll see that they update as you continue to click on different filters. So if you don't see an option, it's probably because of a filter that you selected, and that's why it's no longer an option. So you can just clear those out. The next tab is the race ethnicity profile, and so here you will, so those equity alerts that we saw here on the program summary tab, so if it says, if you have an alert that it asks that you should look at, you can click on it and then it'll take you back to these pages. These are the different profiles. So this is for just incident frequency. So so it looks at all of your groups. So how many are enrolled, how many received a BIR, and how many BIRs. If there's an alert in the program summary tab, then it will be highlighted here in red. So that alert had to do with Hispanic or Latino children of any race. Their child composition value is 76.3%. Their risk ratio is a 2.48%. So it gives you all of these metrics, but you can also, it also writes them out. So that composition value of 76.3, if I look down below, the sentence that corresponds to that is highlighted in red. Of the 38 children who received at least one BIR, 76.3% are Hispanic or Latino of any race, and this group comprises 56.5% of the total child enrollment. So it gives you it gives you that number in a sentence form. If it's blank like this, it just means that there were no BIRs for that group. Or then what you also have are these charts down here. So it gives you the total enrollments, number of children with BIRs, and the total number of BIRs for all of your categories, and then your risk ratio. So that's all on that page. You have the same information by gender, by IEP status, and dual language learner status. What you also have is the next tab, which is child ID by in school, out of school, or expulsion. So here, if you want to see if any children, or who were the children who received an in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension, then you would go to this page. And so what this tab, if I want to see how many children, or which are the children who received an in-school suspension, then I would click on this filter here for ISS total. I would click on 1, and this will show me the children who received an in-school suspension. So I'll see that child ID 1, 4, 7, and 28 received an in-school suspension. So in these 3 filters here, the number 1 means yes, and then 0 means no. So that updates that way. If I want information on a child, I just click on that plus, and it'll show me that child number 4 is a male, that he does have an IEP, and he is not a dual language learner. That just gives you a little bit more information. Out of school suspension, the same thing. I can click on 1, and it'll show me more information. As I click on any of these filters, these over here also update. So this gives me some information. It tells me that child 17 and child 32 are both males. They do not have IEPs. They are Hispanic or Latino. That when you only see one choice here, that means that they belong. That's what they are. So that gives you the information there. You'll see dual language learner. It had both options because one child is a dual language learner, the other one is not. So that just shows you how when you select a filter, everything else changes. These NAs here, you can just ignore these NAs. The in-school suspension by race ethnicity tab is set up just like the other one. the previous ones that we saw, it gives you the same information, but it's only looking at children who received an in-school suspension. So it gives you the same statements, and it also gives you the charts. By gender, IEP status, and dual language learner status. So this one is a good one to highlight. There is a comment here about a div 0 error, divide by 0 error. So when you see this, so you'll see that in non-dual language learner, the child composition was 100%. Then you'll see that the risk ratio, there is an error for that. The reason for that error is because there's nothing to compare it to. Dual language learner students did not receive any in-school suspensions, so you can't compare these two groups, because for you to compare them, they both need to have received at least one of this type of BIR. So if you see this error in risk ratio, and that goes for any of these tabs, it just means there's nothing to compare it to. So this just means that, again, you'll see the dual language learner students did not get any BIRs for in-school suspension, so there's nothing risk ratio can compare that to. So that's why that error is there, and you'll see that the note is there. Then you have out-of-school suspension. Same thing. You'll see the divide by 0 error, because Hispanics or Latinos of any race were the only ones to receive an out-of-school suspension. So you have the same statements, and then you have the charts. Then as we continue by gender, IEP status, dual language learner status, and then we look at dismissal, and that's set up the same. And then it goes through dismissal again by race, ethnicity, by gender, by IEP, and dual language learner status. So these tabs are all set up the same, and these are locked, so there's nothing that you can do here except just read the statements, look at the metrics. So, and then we'll click back to the program summary tab. So again, if you have any issues as you're going through and entering data, anything that's not functioning correctly, or you have any questions, my email is here. Please feel free to email me with any issues that you might have.